Hello, everybody. We are back with you again on another Friday. It's just me, actually, on the Edmentum side. But I am super excited to talk with Lindsay Zilly. She is our guest this week on Edmentum, Illinois Presents. And Lindsay is the Director of Professional Learning for IDEA here in Illinois, the Illinois Digital Educator Alliance. So many of you are perhaps taking a look at this video. We're at the IDEAcon this week, and actually, Lindsay was super generous with her time because she quite literally is coming right off of the road, traveling back home from the IDEAcon in Schaumburg. So, Lindsay, thank you so very much for being with us here today. How are you?
Absolutely, yeah, I'm great. It's not a far drive for me. It is nice to have that extra night at the hotel room, I will say. But I'm happy to be back home with my little ones. But it was so cool to just spend a week completely immersed in education and all of my biggest passions and find my people again in person.
It is different to be back in person and seeing so many folks. Lindsay, you talked about your people. You talked about your passions. What are some things coming from the conference? And as you were driving back, had some windshield time there. What were some of the things that you were reflecting on?
It was funny. I drove back in complete silence. I am a fake extrovert. So I, as an introvert, need time and quiet to recharge. So that was so nice to have. But at the conference, I really love the fact that we get to be lifelong learners, that there is never an end to what we know, whether we're a tech expert or an SEL guru, or we just go to present, there's always going to be something new to learn. And it was just interesting to see the sessions that, drew the biggest crowds. And just like the joy on people's faces, like even if they weren't particularly inclined to go to a certain session, they were just so pumped to be there in person with their people. Throughout, we do plan for IDEAcon for an entire year. So next week we won't, but the week after that, it's back to the drawing board. But with that in mind, we try and have common threads throughout the year with IDEA PD leading up to this big, huge event. So it was cool to see equity throughout everything that we did. It was cool to see the computer science standards, which are coming, to the forefront of conversations, especially next year. And then on the third big focus was teacher wellness. And I really, truly believe many teachers' cups were refilled this week at the conference.
To that point, what were some of the things that maybe some of the things that you heard from some folks, around this idea? I know that that's a theme that's been front and center on this segment for the last couple of weeks. A couple of guests is this idea of teacher wellness, and how do we take care of ourselves? What were some of the what was the metaphorically, what was the temperature check, and no pun intended, what was the temperature check there, as you were talking with folks, around teacher wellness?
It was interesting because everybody knows that they need to do it, and I don't know that anybody is doing it well. At the ending keynote, it was kind of an informal conversation with Sosin Jaber and Dr. Sheldon Eakins. And Ken Shelton asked them, what are you doing for self-care? And neither of them really could answer because, and even though they're two powerhouse speakers that are talking to people about empathy building and equity and building relationships, they really kind of got stumped on that question too. So I really believe it's going to events like IDEAcon or whatever conference, is you in your wheelhouse, and just connecting with educators that can really help you to truly understand self-care is not selfish. And in order for us to best take care of our learners, we have to take care of ourselves first. And this really, I feel like people left feeling recharged. This was their self-care, and now they're ready to go back and do work.
Love it. Sometimes even just sharing space, sitting next to people is energizing in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really interesting to see the evening kind of social events with all of our thought leaders, just having them kind of like let down their hair in their their walls a little bit more and interact with each other. And those conversations were so powerful as well, because it wasn't like the conversations from the presentations ended. It was like, how do we keep these messages going? How do we get people to take care of themselves? How do we get people to go beyond what we just talked about today? And that was just to be a fly on the wall in those conversations was really cool.
I really liked the GameStop. Our booth in the exhibitor hall was right next to the game area, which not only, of course, had your electronics. You know, you had your Nintendo Switch up there, and you know, folks, attendees could play that. But then you also had board games, which was neat. So I liked how that was, you know, a self-care aspect of the conference as well.
For sure, and we're very fortunate that Stephanie Crawford is an IDEA committee member and also owns Cabbages and Kings, which is a board game store in Central Illinois. And so she always brings her library of games, even if we don't have a setup for her. We're always playing games no matter what. But this time we're like, oh, why don't we leverage this? Let's use it in the vendor hall. And so she had literally 3 shelves filled with different games. And then she did a couple sessions on how could we use this game in an educational lens? Like, how could this teach content? So you're absolutely right. That is also a unique way to self-care as well. You know, bonding with educators in a whole different way than you usually experience at conferences.
You mentioned one of the other themes, Lindsay, at the conference was the idea of equity. What are you learning? What are you hearing? You know, around the idea of equity.
So we really worked hard to have that common thread interwoven in the fabric of IDEAcon this year. And Thursday was that really intense work on ourselves with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But one of the light bulb moments for me was when I was able to work with the NORA Project. And NORA Project is a unique organization in that it is all about inclusion, accessibility, and how do we treat all learners the same, giving them equitable access. And the amazing thing that they did for us was they created a slide deck that we shared out with all presenters. And the slide deck articulated how to make your presentation accessible to all types of learners. So whether that's closed captioning or making sure that the text is readable for those people with dyslexia, using certain images or refraining from using certain colors. So we were able to make the learning accessible to all types of people. They also, a big moment for me is them talking about microaggressions as well. And I feel like that's something that I really can now take the learning to the next step. They gave me the tools, and I have a field guide right here now that I can continue to learn and be that lifelong learner with regards to not just diversity, equity, inclusion in the ways that we've been practicing it, but also with people that learn differently from us.
What were some of the feedback that you heard, you know, from folks, presenters, attendees, you know, specific around that project and crafting the presentations to make sure that it was accessible for all folks?
People didn't realize that they weren't including all audiences. Sure. And so it was just an awakening, but also an exciting feeling to be able to now say, wow, I'm meeting the needs of all learners. I'm differentiating my professional learning for everyone, truly. And it's not just adult learning, but it's learning within our classrooms. So it was super empowering for our presenters and our people in the audience to live that and experience that, which is what good PD is all about. You experience it so that your students can reap the benefits.
Lifelong learning taking place for adults at IDEAcon, and then recharging their batteries so that they can go back into their classrooms, back to their buildings, and really instill this idea of lifelong learning for all of the kids who are out there across the state of Illinois. Lindsay Zilly is the Director of Professional Learning for IDEA here in the state of Illinois. And again, we are so happy to call ourselves at Edmentum a partner with IDEA. And we are so very also thankful to have these connections, these relationships with Lindsay, Amber Hefner, and the team at IDEA. So Lindsay, thank you again for being with me here today, and best of luck as we get into the spring. Hopefully the weather starts to change a little bit.
Yeah, from your mouth, straight up. So we also appreciate all of the connections that we make. We love seeing you at all of the conferences and connecting and collaborating. And here's to doing more of that in the future as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you.